G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle. This video is it's actually really multiple topics, and they sort of loosely touch on each other, but each of them is not long enough on its own for a full video, so what I've done is I've really badly decided to squash all of these topics together. So it should be a fun little video. Now, I have a confession to make. When this article came out this morning, I put up a post about the new Marines. I said, look, I really like them. Okay, they're not terrible sculpts for me. I really like them, but I have a minor criticism of them, and I won't go into it because people will just label me as negative when I should just be hyped for the release. That post was bait. I know it's not very nice of me, but I did it to test a salty little theory. And what was that theory? Well, it was that people have problems with the miniatures, and they'll openly just express them. I don't need to say anything. So what did you, the community, decide were the problems of these miniatures? And before we go any further, keep in mind, I like these. I think these are good sculpts. Yes, I'm on record as saying I don't really think they're the best choice of armor for a Horus Heresy starter set. I still stand by it being Mark II or Mark V, because it's more universal to the entire width and breadth of the Horus Heresy, as opposed to in this circumstance where I feel it's very period appropriate to be the end of the heresy. And people can make their arguments either way, but I just want to get that out of the way right at the start, because the first thing that will happen is people get to this point in the video, they'll go, oh fuck, he just hates Marines and he's just going to how shit this release is. No, that's not true. It's the exact opposite of what I think, and yet I guarantee someone has stopped the video at this point and written that already. Always happens. So moving on from that little aside, what did you, the community, decide were the problems? Not me, Mr. Circle. Firstly, you said the legs look too long. They look too long and too gangly and scrawny. Also, people didn't like the Aquila pendants hanging off Trader Marines. The height or scale of the miniatures was a lot of people were put off by. Some legs still have that real bow-legged look, and some people, it seems, feel that they want the Marines to be standing more upright. The armor mark was not suited to the time period. The armor looked too thin, like a normal human, and not a jacked-up post-human was inside it. For some people, it was not looking compatible with swapping parts with existing kits, as in, hey, I don't think I can change out all these parts and put on third-party bits. For other people, it was not looking like there was any special or heavy weapons available to go on these miniatures. They look like they're all just bolt gun equipped. For some people, the models look like they were, quote, wasp-waisted, which I believe is talking about the abdomen on a wasp, how, you know, wasps and ants have that real thin little belly, that little abdomen before you get to the rear of them. That they had useless slings is another criticism. And lastly was my own thought, which is, as some correctly guessed, that they're very monopose. There's essentially 3 upper torso combinations and 5 legs, which grants you really 3 poses to the entire army. I mean, the legs give you a little variety, but when you look at it, there's Marine holding bolt gun across chest at a 45-degree angle with the finger outside the trigger guard, a tactical pose. One who's taking a sight picture, and one who's holding the bolter sort of at the hip, firing the old get some sort of pose. That's it. That's such a minor little grievance. You know, it's a nothing. It's just a little criticism, the little, you know, it's the missing cherry on the cake, as it were. So, clearly, there's a bit of antipathy out here towards these miniatures, because regardless of how valid those criticisms are to you personally, because some people won't give a crap, there's clearly people out there, though, who do, and they have their own thoughts, and unprompted have come to these conclusions on their own. And I've just read them out to you. And I will state categorically now, and this is the first topic change, I do not care what armor you use, how you paint your miniatures. It's your stuff at the end of the day. It does not affect my hobby. I won't refuse you a game or such, and I doubt anyone would. You can do whatever you please, and you should. I feel that many people will find weird justifications, though, for their choices. Again, doesn't affect me. But do also understand this, that because you are perfectly satisfied with the direction of something, don't fall into your own echo chamber, and we all do it, and assume that the people who find fault are the problem. You see, there's a whole swath of human opinions on this planet, and to think you have the penultimate opinion, it's just wrong. I've said many times that my videos are my opinions and should be taken as nothing more, and whilst I can say some things are objectively cited, most of my opinions are not. They're just that. They're thoughts I have. So, you don't need to pay attention to what I say. I'm no special hobbyist cut from a different cloth. I'm a regular hobbyist, identical to you in every way. Except I'm just using YouTube to share my opinion, where some people might type it up on Facebook or keep it to themselves. It doesn't really matter. I've also seen the people that love this release and the new Beakies placing up Rogue Trader artworks, for example, to justify the validity of them in the Horus Heresy. And that's also something I don't care about, because if you think that books from an age before there weren't any other Marines other than Beakies counts as the penultimate proof of their dominance in the Heresy, go right ahead. I'll have my half Eldar, half human turned astropath who became an Ultramarine Legionnaire there ready to fight you, because that's Rogue Trader approved background too. Just because it was a thing doesn't mean it's a good thing. Thinking forward though to this new box, obviously, there are negatives and positives, so let's just look at them. Then you can't accuse me of bias, in theory at least. I'll call these pro and counter, because I don't think of them so much as cons as I do the more nuanced take. So the big pros that I've listed here are coming from people who are, we'll say, not simps, that's too aggressive of a term, we'll just say very, very excited for this new release, very hyped up. And the first pro is obviously, hey, new plastic Marines. That's great. Now that this game's in plastic, they can finally get into it. The counter, of course, to this is there were always, well, not always, but already plastic Marines. For the last 6 years or so, there have been plastic Heresy Marines. That wasn't a restrictive thing for getting people into the game system. Another pro is plastic tanks. Now, the counter to this isn't a counter at all. It's true. This is a vast improvement over the resin ones. This is a great thing for the game, with the exception of what if they discontinue certain resin vehicles. Next pro, the change of the core rules and the game system. Now, the counter to this is it needs to be a direct improvement of the existing system, and I'll go into this later, I guess, but not a lateral shift, a sidestep. Okay, it needs to be a clear improvement, and yeah, I have more thoughts on that. Another pro is ongoing support. True, total pro. The counter to that, though, what's the timeline? Another pro, no longer neglected game system. The counter, though, the game or the factions? Which thing is being supported here? Another positive point is new people joining the hobby. And I think that's great, but are they joining the hobby as it is? Or are they going to take it and twist it into something like what 40k has become, where all the power gamers who are sick of 40k's rules and codex creep and bloat come over to 30k and just pollute the game system with their attitudes? Can't be a healthy thing, right? I think 30k is a refuge for many people from that community. And lastly is more content being created for the game by the community. And yeah, I think that's a total pro and definitely something to look forward to. So to further expand on a couple of these points, okay? The plastic power armor here, right? It's a weird argument that people say, oh, finally, I can get into the game because there's plastic power armor. Because you had the same hype that this armor has for Mark III and Mark IV, and it was just as real as the Mark VI now, except it was back in 2016. People already had the ability to make Marines in plastic for their armies. It's not the draw of the game system. A re-release of Kelth probably would have been just as useful at getting people into the game, I feel, as a Beaky box is. This box, I think, is trying to trade on nostalgia, and it's clearly working. That said, the plastic vehicles is a huge improvement. Price dependent, because let's face it, to use an example here, Games Workshop took the existing $53 Rhino in Australia, and for the sake of a Sisters of Battle sprue, a single sprue in this box, it becomes a $97 Australian dollar kit. So even on minimum Australian wage, that's like 5-6 hours minimum wage. That's 1 day's work before taxes to buy a Rhino. So if they pull the same move with Heresy and the basic Rhino tanks, the Deimos pattern Rhinos, which you will need in quantity at that kind of price, the fact they're plastic is redundant because the price is simply too high, so they need to avoid that. Next, the ongoing support is also an issue because for the time being, we can only assume the best and worst case scenarios. when the past is literally the worst case. The reality we have lived is the worst case scenario. The future, it could be more like 40k. You get a constant FAQs. Which it is will really determine which side of the fence my opinion falls on, and the same thing has to be said of factional support. If you don't see any updates for Isfahan Legions with models and kits and rules, and you don't get regular updates for non-marine factions, and instead their focus is entirely on Beakies and Terror and whatever, then that's no improvement for system health. That is not a positive change. So hopefully that's not a thing. And the last of these sort of things is my biggest pet fear, frustration, peeve, whichever it is rules changes. I like some of what I see. I hate some of what I see. But what I'm not seeing is net improvement. Yet. You see, Games Workshop has a very, I can't understate this, nasty and frustrating habit of reinventing the wheel when they face difficulty with the system. Rather than addressing the faults with a scalpel and surgically fixing busted rules, they take to the rules like the strategic bombing campaign of World War II, just breaking apart all the rules that work in an effort to somehow upend the entire thing for the better. Now, the problem with that is, when you change so much at once, you inevitably induce new problems, and rather than refining what you had, you've created a new game system. Look at the transition from 7th edition 40k to 8th edition 40k for the perfect example of that process. We see this again with this edition of Horus Heresy so far. Now, a viewer who I like pointedly stated that I was being too forensic with my thoughts on the individual movement stats for the new edition, for example, and he pointed out, rightly, that people have been asking for individual movement for years, saying, wouldn't it be cool if Marines move faster than Guard, for example? And in his mind, they were doing actively what players wanted. He's right, of course. I won't disagree on the principles of what he's saying, because it's true, and it's a better attitude from the company if they are listening to that sort of feedback. My problem isn't with doing that, though. My problem is that it has ramifications for system health, and that's what people forget. People are blinded by narrative rules of cool, right? But you have to walk a line between game balance and narrative. And every time you lean too far one way, you detract too greatly from the system as a whole. So think about movie Marines. If a Marine was as powerful on the tabletop as he is in video games and movies, you'd be putting like a tactical squad against 2,000 strong Guard army, and the tactical squad stands a fair chance of winning the battle. But it's terrible for gameplay balance, so they don't do it. To elaborate on this, in 2nd edition, right, you had more individualized stats, different movement values, even within the same squad, based on the sort of weapons they were carrying, for example. You know, the autocannon guy moves 4 inches or 3 inches, whatever, and the other guy's moving an inch faster. And his big heavy weapon that he's lugging around slows him down. So you get different speeds there. But that level of detail, it slowed down games. Those who've played 2nd edition know how long it can take to cross a 4x4 table with units like that, and how big the armies were. 2nd edition games were not huge games. 3rd edition, though, vastly streamlined 40k. And it moved away from narrative and more towards just raw gameplay. A very sterile edition. And we saw the rise in army size due to the efficiency the system afforded you, and allowed games up to sizes basically that you see today without them taking anywhere near the time that a 2nd edition game with the same number of units would take. That more narrative style became skirmishing games, though. So the 2nd edition sort of evolved into what you guess you could call Necromunda, where it gives you the full depth of customization, individual movement stats, individual stats on humanoid models in the same, Strength 3 isn't Strength 3 across the board for basic humans, right? You can have Strength 4 guys, you can have Strength 2 guys. Even within the same faction, you have quite a lot of variation. That full depth of customization, okay? And in more recent editions of the game, they tried to return to a slightly more narrative focus, right? So heading towards 4th, you had 3.5 chaos, and allowed a ton of variety, and players, they cracked the sads because of the balance issues that they faced because of it. And they also neglected the codex released after it were just as powerful, but that's not the point. 3.5 beat the crap out of 3rd edition books, and people remembered that. So when 5th edition 40k rolled around, they gutted the narrative again. They went back the other way. They had a very vanilla focus, and all the boring problems that entails. And of course, I'm sweeping with a very broad stroke here. Don't think I don't realise the true nuances of the systems. I was there after all. But I'm generalising for the sake of the point. And the point being, I know it took me a long time to get there, is that when it comes to the new 2.0 of Horus Heresy, whilst you may be able to say that the changes to movement values are narratively valuable, satisfying even, they may not be valuable to the balance of the system overall. Many of the changes, like I grumbled in 8th edition 40k, were not true issues that lied at the heart of the system. Yes, warlord traits needed a fix, but you don't need to drop marine leadership to 7 to fix it. Psychic powers needed a fix, but making twin-linked weapons on dreadnoughts, double shots, doesn't help that situation. That's change for the sake of change. And I'm not saying I'm against it, but I'm saying they need to justify it. And you'd want to do a damn good job of it, because like I said, instead of using a scalpel to perform surgery on the bad rules, you're taking an addition, smashing it on the ground, gluing the pieces back together how you please, and I'm certain it will be unbalanced in ways that lead directly back to that decision. And it's something Games Workshop has done my entire time with them. 29 years I've been in this hobby. I've seen the pattern, I recognise it. And the reason 5th edition worked so well was it took all the lessons from 3rd and 4th to heart, just slowly refining and improving the game. And if the company wants to make the best possible game they can, then maybe, just maybe, they start again. Not by turning this system into Marge Simpson's Chanel dress, you know, the pink one she gets in that episode, and she just keeps hacking it up again and again and again. Instead, maybe they just need to build a new system. Something that isn't 7th edition, that isn't 9th edition, isn't the bastard child of 7th and 2nd. And they spend a few years tweaking it, testing it. Once they're happy, then they release it. Maybe try a new game system, in fact, in the wild, and call it the Scouring. Or maybe set a game around Badab. And you just, like Warcry, you can use existing boxes that are out there, and you just say, hey, you can use these models in this game system. And people try it out. And if your system's popular, and people give you great feedback, port it over to the main line once you know it works. But you shouldn't go testing your flagship games, or I should say, you shouldn't go using your flagship games as a test bed, because it's fraught with peril, basically. Because if some of these changes don't work, instead of making people happy to change editions, you're going to get a divide in the community where people go, well, I like my old rules way more. And so they'll just go and do those if you've changed too many things. It's a risk you run. So, yeah, anyway, diverging really far, but hey, I have like 5-6 different things I want to talk about. I've sort of crammed them all together in this one episode. Hopefully you guys don't hate it. Hopefully you can see the nuance in the points I'm trying to entertain here. And please talk about them. Don't just rage in the comments. And to the guys who are out there defending my take on Beakies and such, just remember, it's kind of toxic to bring up the outer circle in a lot of communities. People just go, no, I'm not listening to the point you're trying to make. So don't even mention me, okay? Don't even direct people towards my videos. It's pointless. People in certain circles have already decided upon their answer, whatever that answer might be. They've decided on the situation. They've already thought, you know what? I am dead set on loving Beakies, no matter what you say, and I have an old Rogue Trader book, and there's pictures of them on the cover, and therefore they belong in the game. You're never going to change their opinion. Don't even try it. You're wasting your breath. You're probably just going to come across an arsehole to them, and they're just going to dig in their heels further. While it's great to try and maintain the integrity, as I see it, of the system, and as some of you clearly see it for the system, we're not the thought police, okay? Nor should we be. And it's up to people how they want to interpret the game and how they want to play it, okay? So let bygones be bygones, as it were. And those people are out there, you know, putting up daily posts, and I've seen them, I'm not stupid, I know they're directed at us, saying, you know, like, look, here's a picture from 1987 of Beakies. I don't care. I could go and post a picture up every day from all the Horus Heresy novels and Black Books showing no Mark 6. It doesn't prove a point to anyone, okay? It just makes me a dick, so I'm not even going to attempt it. I'll be waiting for all the sourced articles as well from Horus Heresy novels, you know, the 30-odd novels or whatever there is, 40 novels, 50 novels, whatever they're up to, talking about all the Mark 6s featured, because I've hardly seen it featured in the novels, you know, but again, if just because it's not mentioned doesn't mean it's not out there. But, you know, some people just orange circle bad. Okay? That's how they see it. Anyway, I'm back with the outer circle. I hope you enjoy the episode. I enjoy these new miniatures. I think they look good. Would I want an army of them? No, I wouldn't. I would rather Mark 2, Mark 5, Mark 3, Mark 4, basically anything but Beakies except for Raven Guard and Alpha Legion, and scatter a few Beakies through the other armies, squad here or there, or one model in a squad here and there, the replacement for a dead guy from a unit or something, pretty cool as a Beaky. Let's hope the scale is not as bad as it looks, but otherwise they're nice looking models. Nice enough anyway. Make it out of circle. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the episode. I'll see you on the next one.